They don't make them like this anymore. Do you remember the 1970s? It wasn't just a decade, it was a revolution. Before the era of CGI and green screens, we had movies with grit, movies with a soul, stories about real men, real stakes, and the kind of raw honesty that kept us talking long after the credits rolled. From the roar of a V8 engine in a desert chase to the quiet tension of a classic thriller, the 70s was the golden age of the bold. It was cinema that didn't apologize for being tough, and it was the soundtrack to our youth. Now, most people think these classics are locked away in some studio vault, but here's the secret. Some of the most iconic, hard-hitting films from that era are waiting for you right now. Full-length, high-quality, and completely free to watch on YouTube. Today, we're taking a trip back. I've rounded up the films that define that 70s spirit, movies that'll remind you why we fell in love with the silver screen in the first place. So grab a coffee, sit back, and let's revisit the classics. It's time to watch cinema the way it was meant to be seen. Number 10. Moonfire, 1970. Directed by Michael Rossi. We begin our journey in the high-octane, sun-drenched landscapes of the American Southwest and northern Mexico. Moonfire is a film that smells of diesel, sweat, and burning rubber. It's a story built for those who remember when a hero's word was his bond, and a man's worth was measured by the miles he'd put behind him. The plot follows two rugged truckers, played by the steady Richard Egan and the formidable heavyweight boxing champion Sonny Liston. They are tasked with hauling a mysterious, top-secret cargo across the border, but they soon find themselves caught in a web of international intrigue involving a reclusive billionaire and a hidden Nazi fugitive. What makes this film a 4-minute masterclass in tension is its pacing. It doesn't rush. It lets you sit in the cab of that truck, feeling every gear shift and hearing the roar of the engine as they navigate treacherous mountain passes. Richard Egan brings a quiet, professional dignity to the screen, while Sonny Liston's presence is absolutely magnetic. He doesn't need many words to show he's the toughest man in any room. The cinematography captures the vast, lonely beauty of the desert in a way that feels almost like a documentary. There are no computer-generated crashes here. Every stunt is real, every explosion is practical, and the danger feels genuine. It's a film about the brotherhood of the road and the moral dilemmas that arise when you're caught between a dangerous job and doing what's right. For a man watching this today, it's a nostalgic trip back to a time when trucks were iron, roads were long, and the adventure was just one gear change away. Number 9. I Walk the Line, 1970, directed by John Frankenheimer. Next, we move into the misty, brooding hills of Tennessee for a film that explores the fractured soul of a lawman. I Walk the Line stars the legendary Gregory Peck in a role that challenges every bit of his Atticus Finch nobility. He plays Sheriff Taz, a man who has lived a life of rigid duty and fading passion. He is a respected pillar of his community, but inside, he's a man running on empty. That is, until he encounters a young woman named Alma, the daughter of a local moonshiner. This isn't a flashy action movie. It is a slow-burn psychological thriller that explores the dangerous territory of a midlife crisis turned deadly. The film thrives on atmosphere, the damp forests, the rusted-out shacks, and the heavy silence of a small town where everyone knows your business, but no one speaks the truth. Gregory Peck is masterful here. His performance is internal, showing the slow disintegration of a man's morality through a single look or a weary sigh. The tension is amplified by the haunting, gravelly songs of Johnny Cash, which serve as a Greek chorus, warning us of the tragedy to come. As you watch this on YouTube, pay attention to the way director John Frankenheimer uses the landscape to mirror the sheriff's isolation. It's a mature, heavy-hitting drama that asks uncomfortable questions about desire, guilt, and the price of a second chance. It's the kind of storytelling that requires patience and rewards it with a finale that will stay in your mind for days. Number 8. Flap, 1970. Directed by Carol Reed. We round out this first look with a film that is as rebellious and loud as the decade itself. Flap, also known as The Last Warrior, features the powerhouse Anthony Quinn in one of his most spirited and forgotten performances. Quinn stars as Flapping Eagle, a Navajo paratrooper and war hero who returns home only to find his people marginalized and his heritage being paved over by modern bureaucracy. But Flap isn't interested in being a victim. He is a brawler, a dreamer, and a hellraiser who decides to strike back at the system by annexing the city of Phoenix in a one-man uprising. This film is a rare bird, a mixture of rowdy, barroom comedy and deeply biting social commentary. Anthony Quinn brings a boisterous, larger-than-life energy to the screen that is impossible to ignore. He plays Flap with a mix of drunken swagger and righteous anger that perfectly captures the outsider spirit of the early 70s. The film doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of reservation life, but it coats them in a layer of defiance and humor. Directed by the legendary Carol Reed, the movie has a grand cinematic sweep, featuring beautiful location photography and a legendary sequence involving a stolen train. It's a film about dignity, about the fight for one's home, and about the fact that sometimes you have to make a little trouble to be heard. For those who missed the days when movies had characters with real bark on them, Flap is an essential watch that proves Anthony Quinn was one of the greatest to ever do it. Number 7. Alucarda, 1977, directed by Juan López Moctezuma. Now, for those who remember the darker, more experimental side of the 70s, we have a film that is nothing short of a visual fever dream. Alucarda is a cult masterpiece that sits at the intersection of gothic horror and religious obsession. Set in a desolate convent in the 19th century, it tells the story of two young girls whose innocent friendship spirals into a terrifying descent into the occult. This isn't your standard Hollywood horror. This is a film of high art aesthetics and primal fears. Director Juan López Moctezuma, a collaborator of the legendary Alejandro Jodorowsky, creates a world that feels like a painting come to life, saturated with deep reds, stark whites, and heavy shadows. What makes this a 4-minute deep dive is the sheer intensity of the performances. The actresses don't just act, they seem to be possessed by the roles, delivering a raw, screaming energy that was characteristic of the era's push for realism. The film explores the thin line between religious ecstasy and madness, using the claustrophobic stone walls of the convent to create a sense of inescapable dread. For an audience that appreciates cinematography, Alucarda is a feast. Every frame is carefully composed, drawing on classical art and Gothic literature. It's a bold, provocative piece of filmmaking that reminds us of a time when the genre wasn't afraid to be truly disturbing and intellectually challenging. Watching it today on YouTube, you can feel the rebellious spirit of the 70s, a decade that wasn't afraid to tear down icons and look directly into the darkness. Number 6. Vampyros Lesbos, 1971, directed by Jesus Franco. If there's one film that captures the cool, psychedelic vibe of the early 70s, it is Vampyros Lesbos. This is a movie that isn't just watched, it's experienced. Directed by the prolific and eccentric Jesus Franco, it's a dreamlike reimagining of the Dracula mythos, set against the backdrop of a sun-drenched modern-day Ibiza. The plot is thin, but the atmosphere is thick enough to cut with a knife. It follows a young woman who's drawn into the web of a mysterious countess who lives in a secluded villa. But what really makes this film stand out for us today, and why it deserves 4 minutes of your attention, is the incredible style and the legendary soundtrack. The music is a blend of lounge jazz, psychedelic rock, and haunting sitars that perfectly mirrors the film's trippy visual style. The camera moves with a slow, hypnotic grace, lingering on the stark architecture, the vibrant Mediterranean colors, and the fashion of the time. It is a masterpiece of Euro-chic cinema. It captures a moment in history when the sexual revolution, avant-garde art, and traditional storytelling all collided. While it was once considered a scandalous midnight movie, today it is viewed as a landmark of visual style. It's a film for those who appreciate the aesthetic of the 70s, the oversized sunglasses, the minimalist interiors, and the feeling that anything was possible behind closed doors. It's a slow-burn, sensory journey that invites you to turn off your logic and just let the images wash over you. Number 5. The Night Porter, 1974, directed by Liliana Cavani. We move now to one of the most controversial and discussed films of the entire decade. The Night Porter is a heavy, intellectual drama that stars Dirk Bogarde and Charlotte Rampling in roles that would define their careers. Set in Vienna in 1957, it tells the story of a former concentration camp prisoner who discovers that the night porter at her hotel is the same Nazi officer who tormented and obsessed over her during the war. Instead of fleeing, the two reignite a dark, twisted relationship. This is a film that demands a mature audience. It's an unflinching look at the psychology of trauma, guilt, and the blurred lines between victim and victimizer. Dirk Bogarde is chillingly perfect as a man trying to hide from his past in the shadows of a grand hotel, while Charlotte Rampling brings a haunting, fragile strength to her role. The 4-minute segment for this film should focus on its incredible production design, the cold, blue-toned hallways of the hotel, the sharp uniforms, and the oppressive silence of a city trying to forget its sins. Director Liliana Cavani doesn't give the viewer any easy exits. She forces us to confront the darkest corners of the human heart. It is a masterpiece of European art house cinema that sparked debates across the globe upon its release. Watching it now, it serves as a powerful reminder of when cinema was a tool for deep, often painful social and psychological exploration. It is a film that respects the viewer's ability to handle complex themes, making it a cornerstone of 70s intellectual bravery. Number 4. Don't Look Now, 1973, directed by Nicholas Roeg. When we talk about the 1970s, we are talking about a time when thrillers became deeply psychological, and no film captures that better than Don't Look Now. Starring Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie, this is a haunting exploration of grief disguised as a supernatural mystery. The story follows a couple who travels to Venice after the tragic death of their daughter. But Venice here isn't a city of postcards, it's a labyrinth of crumbling brick, dark canals, and shadows that seem to move. Director Nicholas Roeg uses a fragmented editing style that makes you feel the characters' disorientation. The 4-minute focus here belongs to the atmosphere. Notice the use of the color red, a bright, jarring splash against the gray, wet stone of Italy. It's a visual trigger that connects the past to the present in a way that feels like a physical punch. Sutherland delivers one of the most grounded performances of his career as a man trying to use logic to explain the unexplainable. This film is famous for its tension and one of the most shocking endings in cinema history, but its true power lies in how it portrays a marriage under pressure. It's a sophisticated, beautiful, and deeply unsettling film that proves the 70s was a decade where horror grew up. Watching this for free today is a rare opportunity to see a master at the height of his craft, using every trick in the book to keep you on the edge of your seat. Number 3. Sweet Movie. It's 1974, directed by Dusan Makaveyev. For those who lived through the 70s, you know it was a time of total creative freedom, and Sweet Movie is perhaps the most extreme example of that liberty. This is a film that could simply not be made today. It is a wildly provocative, surreal, and often shocking satire on capitalism, communism, and the human condition. The narrative is split into two bizarre threads, one following a beauty pageant winner who undergoes a series of ritualistic humiliations, and another following a woman on a ship filled with candy and the remains of historical tragedies. It is a movie that uses sugar as a metaphor for the way society coats its darkest truths. To fill 4 minutes of discussion, one must look at the sheer bravery of the filmmaker, Dusan Makaveyev. He wasn't interested in making you comfortable. He wanted to wake you up. The visuals are a chaotic explosion of color, food, and human emotion. It's a film that challenges every taboo you can imagine. For an audience that remembers the radical spirit of the 70s, the protests, the counterculture, and the breaking of old rules, Sweet Movie is the ultimate time capsule. It represents the absolute edge of what was allowed on screen. It's strange, it's messy, and it's unapologetically honest about the absurdity of life. It's a challenging watch, but for the true cinema historian, it's an essential piece of the puzzle. Number 2. Dracula vs. Frankenstein, 1971, directed by Al Adamson. Sometimes, after a long day, you don't want a deep psychological drama. You want the pure, unadulterated fun of a Saturday night drive-in movie. Dracula vs. Frankenstein is the ultimate guilty pleasure of 1971. This is a movie that defines the grindhouse aesthetic of the era. It stars Lon Chaney Jr. in his final film role, and J. Carrol Naish bringing a bit of old Hollywood royalty to a wonderfully low-budget monster mash. The plot is gloriously chaotic. The last descendant of Frankenstein is working in a seaside carnival, experimenting on human blood, when Count Dracula himself shows up looking for a way to stay immortal. What makes this worth 4 minutes of your time is the incredible DIY spirit of the production. The laboratory sets are filled with blinking lights and whirring gadgets that look like they were salvaged from a 50s sci-fi set. The colors are garish, the makeup is over the top, and the sheer enthusiasm of the filmmakers is infectious. It's a reminder of a time when you could take a camera, a few monsters, and a wild idea and create something that would entertain audiences in theaters across the country. It's a campy, colorful, and wildly entertaining relic of the decade's obsession with the macabre. For us, it's a nostalgic trip back to the double features of our youth, where the popcorn was salty and the monsters were larger than life. Number 1. Deep Red, 1975, directed by Dario Argento. Finally, we arrive at the pinnacle. If you want to see the 1970s at its most stylish, most intense, and most masterful, you must watch Deep Red. This is the definitive Italian thriller, or Giallo, and it is the film that turned Dario Argento into a global icon. David Hemming stars as a jazz pianist in Rome who witnesses a brutal murder through a window. As he tries to solve the mystery, he is pulled into a nightmare of hidden rooms, creepy dolls, and an obsession with the past. This film deserves every second of a 4-minute spotlight because every frame is a work of art. The camera doesn't just record the action, it stalks the characters, moving through grand Italian villas and empty city squares with a predatory elegance. The colors, especially that signature deep red, are so vibrant they almost bleed off the screen. And then there is the music. The progressive rock score by the band Goblin is a heart-pounding electronic masterpiece that changed film music forever. Deep Red is a perfect machine of suspense. It's a movie that plays with your perceptions, hiding the killer in plain sight and challenging you to find the truth before it's too late. It represents the absolute peak of 70s style, the fashion, the architecture, and the bold operatic approach to violence. It is a masterpiece that has influenced every filmmaker from Carpenter to Tarantino. Watching this today on YouTube in all its restored glory is the ultimate tribute to a decade that refused to play it safe. The 1970s was a decade of giants. It was a time when the screen was big, the stories were bold, and the filmmakers weren't afraid to take risks. These 10 films are just a glimpse into that golden age, and the fact that we can revisit them today for free is a gift. They remind us of where we came from and why we still care about the power of a great story. So whether you're looking for a desert chase, a mountain mystery, or a neon-lit nightmare, the classics are waiting for you. Turn down the lights, turn up the sounds, and remember the way cinema used to be.